Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. FPL Consult here. The 5th round of the FA Cup is now over, so we have confirmation of blank game week 29, and we also have an idea of how double game week 34 and double game week 37 is likely to fall. So we can start planning our chip strategies or confirming our chip strategies, but obviously we have to start with the fixture. So in today's video, I will be discussing the lay of the land, a little bit of an in-depth discussion of how game week 34 and 37 is likely to fall. That would obviously be useful in determining whether you should save the free hit for later on, whether it's worth it. And then after that, we will have a bit of chip strategy discussion as to what are the best strategies I feel to take for the rest of the season. So hopefully you guys find this video useful and enjoy it. It did take quite a while to put this video together and do the research, so hopefully you enjoy this one, and if you do, please drop a like and also subscribe as well if you are new around here. So before we jump into this graphic, I just wanted to caveat that this is not an exact screenshot of Ben's spreadsheet because there's a lot of information. I thought that it would be too much to take in, because as it stands already, after extracting the data as well as adapting it slightly to make it more viewer friendly, it is still a lot of information. So hopefully I'll be able to break this down for you as we go along. But again, this is not an exact screenshot. I've just taken some data that I felt would be useful. I formatted the color the color scheme a little bit, so hopefully as we go along, as I'm explaining, you'll be able to follow it. So if in any part of this video that I'm going a little bit too fast, feel free to just pause or rewind and rewatch that section. Alright, so we'll start with game week 29. That is now confirmed in terms of which teams are blanking as well as which teams will have a fixture. So there will only be 4 fixtures going ahead. So firstly is the Aston Villa versus West Ham game, is the Brentford versus Burnley game, is the Fulham and Tottenham game, as well as a Luton and Nottingham Forest game. So basically only 4 fixtures will be going ahead. Every other fixture will be shifted and postponed to other game weeks later on, which we will discuss. So just a bit of first thoughts on the game week 29 fixtures. These 4 fixtures, to be frank, don't really scream a lot of goals, and on top of that, the players that we will want to target from these teams. I mean, when you look at all these fixtures in totality, it does not seem like a very high upside game week to free hit. But again, I would like to caveat the thinking of the free hit chip, because a lot of us are focused on whether it's worth it to free hit in game week 29 or not, and we are deciding, we're basing the worth of the free hit on just whether it'll score us more points in game week 29 or not. But I think for me, the value of the free hit really comes in the game weeks either side of the blank game week, because if you are free hitting in the lead up to game week 29, you can focus your transfers on other game weeks, on future game weeks, because you don't have to take into account the blank. And then thereafter as well, the game weeks after that, you will be better set up after the blank, right? So I feel like the benefit of the free hit chip is actually greater in terms of what it allows your team to do either side of the blank, as opposed to the blank game week itself. So just a thought that I thought I should share with you guys as well. So blank game week 29 is confirmed. Those 4 fixtures will go ahead. For my team, I am probably able to navigate it with free transfers, but again, very team dependent. And of course, those of you guys with, let's say, triple Arsenal, maybe a Cole Palmer as well, and then you add a couple of City assets, I think it will be quite difficult. So I think the free hit in game week 29 would be pretty much a situation where you won't be able to avoid, right? For some teams, you can't really avoid the free hit in 29, but for some teams, it's a little bit of a limbo where you can take a hit or two to get to maybe 8 or 9 players, and then maybe it's worth saving it. So we'll discuss chip strategy in depth towards the end of the video, but I wanted to talk a little bit about game week 34 and 37 now, because game week 34 and 37 are double game weeks that we have been planning for the longest time already, and we have some idea now of how it is likely to pan out, right? So, and obviously with the idea of how it's likely to pan out, we can actually kind of form an impression of whether it's worth it to save the free hit for later on or use the free hit now in game week 29. So let's go a little more in depth here. So game week 34 is probably still going to be a smaller game week as compared to game week 37. We already knew this. More teams would be doubling in 37, and it still stays the same that the teams doubling in 34 are likely not to double in game week 37, right? So the bridging game weeks, I've included them here so that we can have a kind of a comparison as to whether it is easy to carry teams through from game week 34 to 37 or not, because if we do save the free hit for later on, the worth would be if it is difficult for people without the chip to navigate from double game week 34 all the way to double game week 37. So what I have here on the screen is the expected fixtures for each team for game week 34 and 37. So this data is taken from Ben Crelin's spreadsheet. I just extracted the numbers and I've just formatted it in such a way where if the team is likely to only have one fixture, it would be in a white background. So take for example game week 34, Aston Villa is most probably, or is 100%, right, to only have one fixture in game week 34, and therefore the number there is 1, and also the background is a white background. So you compare it to the rest of the fixtures. If it's red, it's likely that that team is going to blank. So there's Fulham there in game week 34. They are likely to blank. Now this is because of a couple of different scenarios. Basically, Liverpool are through to the FA Cup quarterfinals, and basically if they win Manchester United, which is their tie in the quarterfinals of the FA Cup, then Liverpool versus Fulham in game week 34 is likely to be postponed. Liverpool could still have a fixture in the midweek of 34, but Fulham would no longer have a fixture then, and therefore they would blank. So there is permutations where some teams could blank in 34. There are also permutations where some teams could double here. So take for example Crystal Palace and Everton. They are some of the teams that are very likely to double in 34. Bournemouth as well has a decent chance of doubling here according to Ben, and also Sheffield United. And you take the other teams that are slightly in redder background, that is the Brighton as well as the Tottenham fixtures there. So Brighton, basically they play Chelsea in 34, but there's also a permutation that Chelsea could qualify for the semi-finals of the FA Cup, and therefore Brighton and Chelsea could be rescheduled to either 35 or 36. And then for Tottenham as well, the fixture there that they're having is actually Manchester City, the fixture with Manchester City, but that could change because Man City, of course, could go through to the semi-finals of the FA Cup as well. So again, a lot of information, and that's why Ben's spreadsheet was very, very in-depth as to this discussing what are the potential outcomes. But basically, when we look at these numbers here, the expected fixtures, we have an idea, right, of how it would go. Right, and basically in the game week 37 fixtures right beside me here as well, we also have a certain set of numbers there. So in this next graphic here, what I'm basically going to do is I'm going to remove the teams that only have single game weeks in 34 and 37, and I'm also going to remove the percentages here. So I'm basically going to take a side, and we're going to see how the fixtures are likely to fall in game week 34 and 37. So simplifying everything on this graphic here, we have a better idea of game week 34 and 37 based off of Ben's spreadsheet. So taking a look at the game week 34 fixtures, it is likely, as I've said, I've taken a side here, so there will be no percentages except for the Brighton, Chelsea and Tottenham teams, because those three, there's a lot of different permutations for them, so we can't really take a side there. But for those that I can take a side, I've taken a side. So for Arsenal, the prediction based off of Ben's spreadsheet is that they double in 37 and they no longer double in 34. For Bournemouth, it's the other way around. Bournemouth would likely double in 34 and not in 37. For Brighton and Chelsea, as we mentioned about them, it is slightly more tricky to predict when they are likely to double and when they are likely to have single game weeks. Then for the other teams below that, Crystal Palace and Everton are likely to double in 34 but not likely to double in 37. Fulham likely to have a blank in 34 but will have a double in 37. And then for Liverpool, City, Manchester United and Newcastle, now these are all the big names here. The prediction is that they only have a single game week in 34 and then they double in 37, right? So already alarm bells are ringing off here. It could be tricky, right? And then Sheffield United has a double in 34 and a single game week in 37. Tottenham, again, a tricky one that we're not going to take a side here. And for Wolves, single game week in 34, double in 37. So again, caveat is that these are predictions. I've just used the percentages and I've taken a side here. So looking at these predictions, if we are to use this as a basis, I think my first thoughts are that firstly, using the free hit in game week 34, some people have the idea that maybe it is not that worth it because the teams doubling in 34 may not be as great. So Crystal Palace, Everton, Sheffield United, are they really worth doubling or tripling up on these players or using the free hit to get these players in, right, for the double game week? But my thoughts are that come the time when the double game week is around, we would want some double game week players. You could argue that you could have them in your team and then carry them through. Take, for example, Everton. Their bridging game weeks are Brentford at home and Luton in 36, right? So decent enough. But the real question for me is whether I actually think I come game week 37, I would want to still be carrying these kind of players like Everton players. Would I take, for example, Sheffield in 34? Maybe I'd have one or two players from their maximum, right? And then they have Newcastle in 35, and then in 36 they have Nottingham Forest and a single gaming in 37. I don't really want to carry these players through. So for me, it is still, to a certain extent, worth it to free hit in game week 34 because not only will I get in some double game week players depending on how the fixtures fall, but also I don't have to get these players in on for myself. I'm wildcarding in game week 31. I don't have to carry these players through from my game week 31 wildcard all the way until the double in 34. So I can just omit these players which are from teams that I'm not really super confident of, right? Take, for example, Crystal Palace, Everton, and Sheffield United. For Bournemouth, it could be a slightly different story. We'll have to wait and see what happens with Solanke closer to the game week 28 deadline. But just planning ahead a little bit, I'm just thinking if I wildcard in 31, do I really want to be carrying that many Bournemouth, Crystal Palace, Everton, Sheffield United players? Maybe not. Maybe not. And if I free hit in game week 34, then I can just bring these players in for the time being and then lose them for the next few game weeks, right? So that is the value of the free hit then. But what I would say as well is that I am completely cognizant of the fact that your worth of the free hit in game week 29 could be greater than using the free in 34. And that's because if the free hit in game week 29 that we discussed earlier allows you to just focus your transfers either side of game week 29, and basically you can set your team up well for, let's say, 28 that's upcoming after this game week 27 deadline, and also beyond game week 29 there's 30, 31 all the way up to 34. There are still some good fixtures to attack there. If using the free hit in game week 29 allows you to do that, I think there's a higher upside there as well. So I wouldn't say that comparing using the free hit in game week 34 or we'll discuss using the free in 37 later on, but I wouldn't say that using the free in 34 is that much greater of a benefit as to using it in game week 29. Talking about game week 37 now, whether it's worth it to free hit then, the value I feel of using the free in game week 37 is the uncertainty of whether the title race could be over, or some places, some spots in the Premier League could be decided already. Some teams don't have much to play for, and therefore come game week 37 we could see some rotation there. With the way that the Premier League race is going, I think the top teams still have a lot to fight out for. It's very early to say. It could reach a point in time by game week 37 that maybe the title is decided already. We don't really know. But the value then for me is really the uncertainty. Because if I look at the fixtures there, so many big teams double. Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, City, United, and Newcastle. Spurs as well, also with a potential, very likely double in 37 there. If these all do happen, I think using the bench boost in game week 37 is slightly more worth it to me, because then I would be able to take advantage of all these fixtures as opposed to just free hitting and only getting 11 players out of all these players from the big teams, right? So for me, it still stays the fact is that I think it is slightly more worth it to either free hit in 34 or 30 or 29 and then bench boost in 37. But that obviously is a biased view because that is my own chip strategy. So now let's take a look at the other chip strategies that I have. So in totality, I'll discuss 5 chip strategies, and depending on how your team looks like, you can choose one of these strategies for your own team for the rest of the season. So now that we have a better idea of how double game week 34 and 37 are likely to fall, as well as confirmation of blank game week 29, here are 5 different chip strategies that I feel, based on your own team, could help you to optimize your strategy for the rest of the season. So we'll go one by one. And really, it is very team dependent. So there's no one strategy that I would say is the best. I have some preferred strategies which I will share with you guys. And there are some that I feel are slightly less optimal, but is very team dependent. So we'll start with the first strategy here in the gray box on the top left. And basically, it is a strategy that I feel will be the most popular. Free hit in game week 29. And this will be the most popular, I feel, because it has reached a point where there's only 4 fixtures in game week 29. It is difficult to navigate based off of a lot of teams and how they're looking like at the moment, the way they're set up. Avoiding a free hit in game week 29 is not as easy as some people would like to. So I think for those teams, you pretty much will be forced into a situation where you have to free hit in game week 29. So it is not the worst thing in the world. From now all the way up till, let's say, game week 34, right? Because my plan, if you are free hitting game week 29, is to wildcard in game week 35. From now all the way up till game week 34, your fixtures can be your transfers, can be focused on making longer term moves, right? Basically, we're now in 27. You have a couple of transfers to lead up till the post game week 29 period, where some fixtures will start to swing. You can focus your transfers on those fixtures. You don't have to take into account that you need to get enough blank game week 29 players in, because you're going to free hit then. So that's the worth of it as well. Then of course you get to field an 11 for game week 29. Come game week 35, you would have dead end your team into game week 34 first, and thereafter wildcard in game week 35. So the value of that also is that by dead ending your team into 34, which is also a blank game week, you can potentially get in some, let's say, Crystal Palace players, Everton players, Sheffield United players, or Bournemouth players that we were discussing just now that could likely have a double in 34. Get these players in and then lose all of them on your wildcard in 35. Get ready and load up on all the players from the big teams like Liverpool, City, Arsenal, United, Newcastle. Load up on these players which are potentially going to have a double in 37, and then you bench boost in game week 37, which is the biggest double game week of the season. So this strategy, I feel, in the grey box will be the most popular. The one that I am actually on is the green box, which is the wildcard in 31, free hit in 34, and bench boost in 37. So how that works basically is that I'm in a situation where I can navigate game week 29 with just a couple of transfers. If I take a hit or two, I should be able to field a decent number of players in game week 29. There will be some of the FPL managers in the community, if you're watching this, that you're able to navigate game week 29 with just free transfers or maybe a hit or two. Then I think this strategy is also very viable. And the reason why I've put wildcard 31 is because in game week 30, Arsenal play Manchester City, and therefore it would be tricky to load up on your Arsenal and Man City assets in game week 30 if you wildcard. So that's why I prefer a game week 31 wildcard, where the fixtures start to swing for Arsenal and City, and you can also take the opportunity to load up on Liverpool assets, maybe some Manchester United and Newcastle assets as well, right? So that's the thing about wildcarding in 31, right? You would have navigated 29 based off of free transfers. Come game week 30, you can also dead end your team, right? Get in a couple of players, just a 1 week punt, and then come game week 31, you wildcard, get ready for the rest of the season, free hit in 34. So the value of this is, again, so that I don't have to carry my Crystal Palace, Everton, Sheffield United, or Bournemouth players through. What I can do is just omit them from my game week 31 wildcard when these teams, which are teams that I feel are not teams with a lot of upside, right, double in 34, I can just free hit them in, because I'm pretty sure by the time it comes around, I will still want a couple of their players because they do double, right? So free hit in 34, and then bench boost in 37. So all my transfers from game week 31 onwards would be leading up to this bench boost in 37, because I don't have to account for the teams doubling in 34 anymore, and therefore I can focus my transfers on the bench boost in 37, and that will be my strategy moving forward. I'm pretty set on this already. So moving forward from now in game week 37, a lot of my transfers will be revolved around getting players who play in game week 29, navigating that, and then setting up for the wild card in 31, which should be the next time I use my chip. So the bottom three chip strategies here, I feel are slightly less popular, but depending on how your team is set up, it could also be viable. So the first one is actually the wild card in game week 33. So this is a viable strategy for a couple of reasons. For some teams that are set up right now, you could be in a situation again where I said you could navigate your game week. You could navigate game week 29, which is free transfers, and then come game week 33, you will have a slightly better idea, right, of whether it's super worth it to save your free hit. It's whether it's worth it to free hit in 34 or 37, namely because maybe the title race you have more understanding of which way it would swing, whether teams would rotate in game week 37, in which case using the free hit then is better than using the bench boost in game week 37. So instead of using the bench boost in 37, you free hit in 37 so that you can account for rotations in 37, right? And then you wildcard in 33 so that you can bench boost in 34, right? Even though it's not the biggest double game week, but this is still a viable strategy for some people. It is not one that I would recommend a lot of people, but I think there are some people going for this strategy as well, because at least in game week 34, there would still be teams fighting it out, and you would be sure and certain that the title race is still not decided yet, right? So bench boosting in 34, there's a slight lesser risk that you would be faced with a situation where a lot of rotation is happening as compared to bench boosting in 37, right? So the last two strategies here, wildcarding in 27, wildcarding in 28, these are strategies I feel come into play because of a couple of different reasons. Some teams right now are in trouble. You have a couple of flags, even Huang and Solanke, which some people have in their teams right now. They've also picked up injuries in the lead up to game week 27 now. Not only that, as I've said at the start of this video already, we have confirmation of how the game week 29 blanks are going to fall. We also have an idea of 34 and 37. So because of that, it could make sense with a rough idea of how it's going to fall to wildcard now, get your team out of a tricky situation that you're in, set up for the rest of the season with the kind of predictions or that we have at the start of the video, and also a bit of dealing with the problems in your team right now. So you wildcard it either in 27 or 28, and to get your team out of these tricky situations. But of course, the difference between wildcarding in 27 and 28 is there is a slight difference basically. So wildcarding in 27, you can bench boost in 28 if you really do want to, pending Solanke's injury. But wildcarding in 27 allows you to actually if I were to wildcard in 27, I don't think I would be free hitting in game week 29. I would wildcard in 27 with an idea of navigating game week 29 with just free transfers, so that you can stick to the original strategy of free hitting in 34 and bench boosting in 37 again. There is an outside shout of wildcarding in 27 and then bench boosting in 28 if that is what you think you want to do with your team. Right, but again, wildcarding in game week 27, I'm not opposed to it. I think it could work for some teams that are in trouble, right? And same for game week 28 as well. Some teams are not very well set up for a double game week 28 where there's Bournemouth and Luton doubling. For my own team as well, I don't even have Solanke. I have no Bournemouth players. I also have no Luton players. So I don't think I'll be very well set up for game week 28. And therefore, some people could see it as an opportunity to wildcard in game week 28, get rid of your injuries, load up on some doublers there, optimize your team for game week 28, and also for the future game weeks moving forward, where you can again stick to the original strategy of free hitting in 34 and then bench boosting in 37. The downside of wildcarding in 28 is that you would have to structure your team in such a way that you have to navigate game week 29 with free transfers. Basically, you only have one transfer that you can make in game week 29, where there's only 4 fixtures as well. So you could be faced with a slightly less optimal game week 29 team. But again, that may not be the worst thing in the world, because your other chips like your free hit and your bench boost can make up the points for you later on as well. So again, these are 5 different strategies, a lot of different ways that you guys can go around playing the rest of the season. But I think I would imagine the gray box and the green box, which are at the top here, are probably going to be very, very popular strategies. Let me know what you guys are doing with your chips in the comments down below, as well as how these fixtures in the double game week 34 and 37 are going to affect your transfers moving forward as well. So let me know if I've missed out anything. Hopefully this video was helpful for you guys. If you did enjoy this, please drop a like, please do subscribe as well, and I will catch you in more game week 27 content very soon. Bye bye.